Hey everyone, this is the third and final video on this little mini-series on chaos destruction inside of Unreal Engine 5 Early Access. I'll most likely revisit it again sometime, but this is all I have planned for the time being, and in this video, I'm just going to go over some different ways to optimize the editor for chaos destruction so that our performance doesn't take such a huge blow whenever we use the feature. Let's get started. Now that we've covered fracturing, I want to go over some optimization tricks so that you can get better frames in the editor and in a game when you're using chaos destruction, because as you saw in the last video, things can very quickly get out of hand. So let's create a new geometry collection. This time let's do it with a sphere. And now we can activate the fracture editing mode. And the first thing you want to do is when you fracture it, you might want to fracture it. Well, let's create a geometry collection here first. You might want to put in big numbers to try to get a whole lot of fracturing here. And that isn't the best idea, just to go in and pump up the numbers and hit fracture, because then when it first breaks apart, it's going to break apart into a bunch of small pieces, because your level 1 fracture is a bunch of small pieces. Instead, you might want to do something like 8 and get some big chunks. You could go a little bit, you could go over that, 10, 15, or under 4, even 2, and then a fracture like that. And now you have these 8 fractures. And now with these 8 fractures selected, we could up our number and do something like, I don't know, 16, 20, something bigger than 8. And then if we fracture again, we have these sub-fractures. And so if I go through and select these again, I should have, let's see if I can just undo some of the fracturing here so I don't have to select these. Okay, well, I can't undo that. It's not really working out. So instead, I'm just going to select everything, and I'm going to pump it up to something like 20, or, maybe 20 to 50. And now I'm going to hit fracture. And it was pretty smart with how it fractured things up in our levels, but I'd prefer it to be separated up a bit more. So what I can do is I can go over to this clustering section and click on this auto section and auto cluster, and it's going to rearrange how this is all clustered to give us our levels. And we'll sort of do some automatic optimization. So now we have 4 levels, our level 1 with 8, our level 2 with 56, and level 3 with 302. And so now if we open our geometry collection and set our collision type and implicit type, save and close and play, when this breaks apart, we're not going down to 15, 20 frames per second anymore, because we can see not everything is coming apart at first. I can go in and I can jump around here, and these pieces can break apart into smaller pieces, close to what they would be like if we just put in a high number and fractured once. But still, our frames aren't being affected as much as they were before. Now they're still being affected. And so there are some more things we can do. We can open up our geometry collection and we can enable Nanite inside of it with these 2 settings. Strip on cook and enable Nanite. And the reason you want to use these and not your mesh is because if you try to fracture a Nanite mesh right now, that crashes the editor, or so I've heard. So you want to do it from your geometry collection settings. And now things are already, I think, a little bit better than before. Showbone colors won't work with it. We're still having this drop in frames per second though. So another thing we can do is we can go to Edit, Project Settings, and if I just type in Async, I can pull up these two async settings under frame rate, substepping async, and tick physics async. We should enable both of these. And now if I play, you can see we break this apart. We jump around on it. And we still, at this point we had 40 or so frames. Now I'm still getting close to 100 frames. And now, so I want to see how this might scale if I duplicate the sphere. Something like that to play. And our frames drop a good amount when they're all broken here on the ground. And so there's still one more thing we can really do. And that is to create a physics field that disables these meshes as they hit the ground. And to do that, I'm going to again recommend you guys go watch my video on physics fields where I've already covered that. But as far as optimizations go for chaos destruction inside of the fracturing mode, that's pretty much everything there is. Other than that, your other big option is to just not split your meshes up as much. It'll scale better if we might want to go, let's create a new sphere, a new geometry collection, go to uniform, and we could do something like 4 for our level 1, fracture that, and then we could fracture these 10 times. And now our level 2 is only really 23. There's not as many small pieces, but that might not be necessary. And so if we change our collision and implicit type, enable Nanite, save and close. And if I'm just Alt and clicking and dragging to duplicate these. And now if we play with a mesh that doesn't break apart as much, our frames are perfectly fine. So it really comes down to you can get some optimization with the async physics ticking, with how you cluster and level your destruction. Async ticking is making some of this go a little bit slow when we knock into them. Again, this is an early access, so we'll see how things are once we're out of it. But really, the best way to optimize is to just not break apart your meshes as much. And personally, I think this looks perfectly fine and that this is perfectly acceptable. A level of breakage. That one just disappeared through the ground. And that can probably be fixed by playing with the substepping setting, maybe. So when it comes down to it, the best way to really optimize is just not fracturing your meshes as much to try to avoid the high numbers. And when you need it, if you really need something fractured heavily, to fracture it. But then really try to limit the amount of heavily fracturable things you have being simulated at any one time. If you're going to have something break apart a lot, really try to place a physics field down to stop the simulation and all the pieces that fall on the ground. Those sorts of things. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell too. And be sure to share the video around with anyone you think might enjoy it, like it, or find it useful in any way. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.